You know that feeling when you're sitting in a cinema of an evening, by yourself obviously, and you're waiting for the film to start, waiting for the lights to dim, and then suddenly, from somewhere in a corner, comes some music. Since we started this channel a few years ago, I've really wanted to get my hands on a real cinema organ or theatre organ. It's the same thing. And it's taken until today to finally get there. We've come to Düsseldorf on the River Rhine, just north of Cologne. I'm not allowed to say just north of Cologne. When you talk about Düsseldorf, there's a lovely sort of rivalry between the two cities. But anyway. Here we are in the Film Museum in Düsseldorf, and in the Film Museum they have their own little cinema, sort of about 130, 140 seat cinema. It's called the Black Box Cinema, and in this cinema there is an original German cinema organ from Welte. That's the company that made it. Now Welte was actually an international company for a while. They even built a few cinema organs in America. A lot of American viewers will recognize the name of Welte, W-E-L-T-E. I think there were 9 or 10 organs in and around New York. Some of the earliest theater organs there were, I think we're talking like First World War time, between 1914 and 1920. Some cinema organs from the company Welte. And then in the 20s, they started making them here in Germany. It's a German company originally from Freiburg, and they started making them here. And this lovely little instrument has made its way to the Black Box Cinema here in Düsseldorf. International viewers or international lovers of cinema organ will sort of recognize the layout of this console. This is, of course, the two-manual console of our Welte organ here in Düsseldorf. And we've got this sort of horseshoe shape, that's what it's called, with all the stops laid out in this row. And then in the middle we have some more stops or some more controls, tabs, that control different things. Now, for those who don't know what a cinema organ is, we'll get into the pipework in a minute, but cinema organs were originally designed to accompany silent films. In the sort of cinema days of old, there may have been a piano player. There's a piano next to the organ here. Sadly, they're not connected to one another, but no, it's there. There may have been a piano in the cinema to accompany the silent film, or they may have had a few instrumentalists. And of course, as the cinemas grew and got bigger and bigger, a single piano wasn't loud enough to fill the whole cinema, and a few instrumentalists would become sort of too expensive over a period of time. So they installed organs, cinema organs, and it is basically a pipe organ. These things here, these control the pipes. We're going to have a look at the pipes in a minute. And then there are some special effects, some sort of silent film effects. And we're going to have a look at all of this today. It's rather exciting. So for those who really don't yet know what a cinema organ is all about, there are a few rather great differences, shall we say, between a cinema organ and a classical organ, like a church organ or a concert organ. And one of the first things that you have to get used to is the fact that the entire organ, all the pipework and most of the effects, are all enclosed. That means they are in a wooden box, basically, and they have these shutters, these wooden shutters at the front, which can open and close to control the volume or the dynamics of the organ. And that is, of course, controlled by this pedal here. It's a normal swell pedal, and I can open it, and then the whole organ is louder, or I can close it. The whole organ is then very quiet. Now, some of you are going to say that there's two pedals there. What's that one? We'll come to that one in a minute. That's a crescendo pedal. That's a rather special effect. It's rather clever. But for those of you who are still uncertain what a cinema organ is, as soon as you hear this sound, you will know exactly what we're talking about, the big wobbly flute sound. That is the typical theatre organ sound, a big sort of wobbly flute sound. Now, on an American or a British theatre organ, that would be the tibia clausa. But here, on a German organ from Welte, it's called the Bourdon Horn, which I've never heard before. It's a rather exciting name. And I'm guessing it just means a large-scale stopped flute, which is basically what a tibia clausa is. And to give it that effect, well, the stop on its own is not very exciting. It sounds like a sort of a calliope on a boat. Yeah? But what gives it that special effect is this thing here called a tremolo, or in some organs a tremulant. And that sort of makes the sound all wobbly. And that gives us our cinema organ sound. Now you know what we're talking about. So let's have a look at this console in a bit more detail. It's still laid out like a normal organ console. We have two manuals and, of course, pedals for the feet. And then the stops are actually laid out in a very sensible way. So if we start on the left, we have all the stops for the pedals, and they are colored green, which is rather easy to see. Okay, so those are the green stops there. Then from the red ones here, all the way up to here, all the way up to here actually, it says harp. We'll get to that in a minute. These are the stops for the lower manual. So if I just play a few notes now. Okay, those are the lower manual stops. Then we have our tremolos in the middle, where you can find them nice and easily. And from there, we have all the controls up to here where it says piccolo, all the controls for the upper manual. So they sound, of course, like this. Yeah, so that's that. Now, over at the side here, we have some black colored stops, and they are for a few effects. And then in the middle, let's go from the right, we have a few more effects. Then we have a few colored things here. These are all the couplers. Now, why are they colored? Well, don't forget, if you're going to be playing in a dark cinema to accompany a film, everything's dark around you. So you've got only the lights in the console here. So you want to be able to grab things quickly. So that's why they're color coordinated. So those are the couplers to sort of couple everything together. Then we have a couple of effects here. Vogelgesang in German. That means bird song. We'll come to that in a moment. There are two different bird songs. Then in the middle, we have some more black effect stops. And then we have some colored effect stops. So here are some blue ones. They obviously belong to the upper manual. Then some red ones. They belong to the lower manual. And some green ones. They belong to the pedals. We even have two blank stops. So I think Mr. Welte was planning something else with this organ and didn't get round to it. I wonder what that would have been. So there's another rather special sort of thing about cinema organs that you really need to know, and that's the number of stops that we have here. If we look at the bottom manual, you would be mistaken to thinking we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 stops, plus a harp, 19 stops just for the lower manual. Now, there are 19 tabs, that much is true, but there aren't 19 ranks of pipes. Now, on a church organ, for example, if you have an 8-foot flute, you have an 8-foot flute. You then have a 4-foot flute. That's a separate rank of pipes, yeah? Not on a theatre organ. And this is where things get rather clever. This is the guy who invented the Wurlitzer company called his invention the Hope Jones Unit Orchestra. Thankfully, they changed that name to Wurlitzer Theatre Organs eventually, but the Hope Jones Unit Orchestra, and this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about units of pipes, okay? So think of it as an extended rank of pipes. So let's take our 8-foot flute that we had there. Now, an 8-foot flute, here we have a 5-octave keyboard from C to C, so that means we have 61 pipes in that rank for 8-foot. Now, instead of having an extra 61 pipes in a completely separate rank of pipes for a 4-foot flute, the organ builder just put on another octave of pipes at the top end. Yeah? Put on another 12 pipes at the top end. So now from one rank of pipes we have two stops. We have an 8-foot and a 4-foot. They're exactly the same rank of pipes, okay? Just in two different octaves, as it were. Same thing with the 16-foot flute at the other end. The organ builder, rather than take another 61 flute pipes, decided to just bung on 12 pipes at the bottom end of that rank so that we can now extend it out to 16 foot. So from this one rank of pipes, we now have 16, 8, and 4. That's not true. We also have 2-foot stop. So the organ builder took an 8-foot stop, added 2 octaves to the top end and 1 octave to the bottom end, and suddenly we have a 16, 8, 4, and 2 rank pipe. Does that make sense? So we have 61 pipes for the 8-foot, plus 12 for the 4, plus 12 for the 2, plus 12 for the 16. So we now have 97 pipes in one rank. Yeah, one row of pipes, now 97 pipes, and that gives us 4 different stops. Actually, it gives us more than 4 different stops because we can have our little sort of mixture stops in the middle, like a 2 2/3 or a 1 3/5 or all that kind of thing. So it's rather clever. Now, this is all controlled electronically, or electrically, I should say. Technically, electro-pneumatically. As you can hear, there is wind at the console here. Can you hear that? Sort of makes some windy noises. If I press this, you can hear wind at the console. So it's all controlled using electro-pneumatics. Very, very clever. Now, why did they do that? On a church organ, if you have 4 different flutes, you have 4 different ranks of pipes. Well, imagine the amount of space that takes up. Yeah? It takes up a lot of space. That's why organs tend to be huge things up in the gods in churches. Yeah? Now, in a cinema, you're not going to have that much room. So for reasons of space saving and, of course, money saving, they have condensed these ranks into one. So on this organ, we actually only have 8 ranks of pipes, but all these stops to control them. So we have the flute, we have 3 string stops, we have, come and have a look, we have a viol d'orchestre, an orchestral of violin, that sounds something like this. That's very gentle. We have a vox celeste that goes along with that, that's that slightly out of tune string. Okay, and then we have this big viola, that's a much bigger string set. Okay, now here's our 8-foot flute that we already talked about. Here's our 8-foot tibia, or Bourdon Horn, as it's called here, that we talked about. Now we have a Vox Humana, and you need the tremulant for that. That's a lovely sort of Vox Humana shimmery effect. Yeah. There's something here called a Vox Humana Echo, and as far as I can tell, it does nothing different to the normal Vox Humana, so I'm not sure what that's all about. The Vox Humana. Here's the normal Vox Humana. And now if I put on the Vox Humana Echo, that little box closes, and now we have the Echo Vox Humana. That's something I've never seen before. We have a saxophone, which is like a Vox Humana on steroids. And then this thing called an oboe here. It's like an organ oboe. It's not like an orchestral oboe. And that's it. Those are the 8 ranks of pipes we have on this organ. And thanks to the multiplex, or the unit, or that system of organ building, we have many, many more stop possibilities. So here, for example, we have a Vox Humana at 16, 8, only 16 and 8. We don't have it at 4. We have the Bourdon Horn at 8 and 4, and so on and so on. Yeah? So that it's all sort of extended ranks of pipes to give it a much larger sound than you would immediately think, only looking at the pipes. Right, that's the pipe work. Now let's have a look at some of the little effects. Oh boy. Now, for such a small organ, it's only an 8-rank organ, but it's got the most enormous number of toys on it, and I think that's wonderful. So here we have the color-coordinated toys. So in the pedals, we have what's called a pauke, that means timpani. Obviously, they're not tuned, it's just a bass drum, basically. Yeah. And we have cymbals. Okay, so then on the bottom manual, we have a snare drum. Could do with a bit of tuning, it's a bit low. A tambourine, of course. If we want to get a bit more Spanish, we have some castanets. For a bit of humor, we have a wooden block. And for Christmas, you have your sleigh bells. So they're not tuned, they're just sort of percussion effects for the lower manual. The lower manual is intended to be the accompaniment to the melody. The upper manual would be where you play your melody, and downstairs is where you play your accompaniment, so just the harmonies and that kind of thing. Now, upstairs we have a Glockenspiel, or as it's called here, a Stahlharmonika, but it's a Glockenspiel. And of course you have a xylophone, and thankfully it is a reiterating xylophone. What does that mean? It means this. Okay, so it repeats. So those are the effects for the manuals that we have there. Now, all of these black ones that we mentioned before, these are the sort of the silent film effects that are good fun. We have the little drum by itself. Yeah, we have a different cymbal this time. It's a much louder cymbal, a crash cymbal. Okay, so there's the original cymbal for the pedal, and here's the crash cymbal. It's not, I think it's not quite as loud, but it should be louder. Then we have the bass drum on its own, so you can control it like that. We have a gong, a strong gong, and we have a soft gong, basically the same, but we have a gong, sort of, what do you call it, a sort of a gong roll, that's the word we're looking for. That's good fun for films. Then we have Sunday morning at the church bells. That's kind of cool. Or if you just want a bell on its own to maybe toll the hour. On the screen you see you're accompanying your silent film and there's a picture of a clock tower showing 12 o'clock. Isn't that brilliant? So that's rather cool. So that's all controllable from here. Now the idea is you're playing your sort of melody up here, so your left hand can just grab at these, or if you're accompanying strong, your right hand can just grab at them in the middle. That's the plan there. Now over here, we have some different effects that sort of stay there. That's just called water noise. We then have something called rain. Rain falling on a tin roof. We have a storm, which I think is really cool. It's the most bizarre effect, but it's really rather wonderful. Isn't that cool? Wind blowing through the old windows. And then we have this thing called thunder, which is basically a bolt of lightning and then some thunder in the background. Listen to this. And it's rather cleverly done. So we've got the cymbal going, and then there are some bass pipes here from the pedals, sort of all in semitones, vibrating away, and you can hear the whole building shaking actually. So that's a rather good effect. Now over here we have some effects that sort of stay where they are. So here's my little siren, useful for Charlie Chaplin films. We have a ship's horn, which is a rather sort of dark sounding ship's horn, I think, but never mind. A telephone, of course. All these things you see in silent films. Yeah? So how do you create the sounds? Well, they're done with actual bells in there. I'll show you that in a minute. We have an alarm signal, which is basically just a little bell. It's probably meant to do it like that. It's meant to be like a fire bell. Yeah? Then we have a klaxon, which is your comedy horn. Yeah, that sounds more like a ship's horn, doesn't it? We have a train whistle. And then my favorite effect, which is, I think is beautiful, you can just leave this on, it's just called train, okay? And it's meant to be a steam train chugging down the tracks. Now, normally on the theatre organ where you see sort of steam train effects, you get the steam effect, a sort of a blowing of air, and it sounds like steam, but this is brilliant. This has got its own rhythm. That's great, isn't it? So when you've got the train thundering down the tracks, the damsel strapped there by the villain and things, so here's the train coming. And a bit of music to accompany that. Isn't that brilliant? I think that's amazing. It's an amazing number of effects for such a small organ, but I think it's great. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to go in behind the curtains and have a look at how this is all created. Bear with me. Welcome inside the organ. It's great in here. It's incredibly warm and it's incredibly sticky. It's 24 degrees Celsius and 55% humidity in here. So it's not the most comfortable of rooms, but it's controlled, so it stays like this all the time. So the organ doesn't really go in and out of tune that much. Now, let's start here. These are your swell shutters. Some on this side and some over on that side. And as you can see, they are even controlled pneumatically. These are great sort of bellows that sort of open and shut them in stages. So here are some of the other ranks of pipes. You can see them all along the back wall throughout the entire length. And then here in the middle, we have all of our wonderful effects, the toy counter. It's literally called a toy counter because normally they are here on one chest themselves. Now underneath there we have the Glockenspiel and the harp. I forgot to show you the harp from the console. And then as you can see we have the drum. So here's the big drum, here's the snare drum up there all by itself. Here are the cymbals doing their thing, and then all the other various sort of effects. Now if you come with me, dangerous here, my poor missus has to sort of hold the camera and follow me around in here. It's not tight thankfully, but it's a bit of climbing around to do. So something you can see here very clearly are these electromagnets here that control the effects, but they don't just control the effects, they also control the pipes. Now you can't see the electromagnets, but trust me, under each pipe there's going to be an electromagnet that controls a valve that lets the air in and out. You can see the way it's all wired together, yeah? But it's all, it's all controlled electro-pneumatically. Now, back in the 1920s and 30s, all of this was allowed. Now, nowadays, of course, this isn't open to the general public. Yeah, if it was, this would have to be behind glass or something because that's live electrics there. Now, it's only about 9 to 12 volts DC, so it's not really going to hurt you if you touch things. But that's basically that bar running across there, that's the earth for all of this stuff here, yeah? So it's all a bit old-fashioned, it looks a bit primitive by today's standards, but it works, it still works all these years later, and it's instant as well. Don't forget, when I press a key on the organ, it's instant here. Now, I'm just going to move over here. You don't have to come with me, but you can see the rest of the pipework here laid out rather beautifully, yeah? So there's the big stopped flute pipes that we told you about, and here at the front we have the traverse flute, or the open flutes that are here. So it's all beautifully laid out, everything's got plenty of room to speak, and like I say, here are the shutters which open and close to let the sound in and out. Now, so there you have a brief insight, it's not very brief, but there you have an insight into the world of the theatre organ, or at least the world of a German theatre organ. It's something I have never seen before until today, so I was rather excited. So, time to say thank you. Time, of course, to play a piece of music, or two or three. And I would like to start, of course, by thanking Florian Deterding. He's the boss here at the Film Museum, and he very kindly gave us the day here in the cinema to play with the organ and find out more. The museum is open at the moment to general public, but the cinema is still closed due to Corona. Obviously, with the seating situation, it's not possible to allow people in. So the cinema is closed until the 1st of September 2020. But that was good for us because it meant we could come in and just have it to ourselves for the day. So thank you, Florian, for letting us come in and do that. Now, it's time to play some music. And as many of you may already know, one of my favorite jazz musicians or organists or pianists or whatever you want to call him is, of course, Fats Waller. And Fats Waller was not just a perfect jazz piano player, he was a brilliant jazz organist. And he recorded rather a lot of music back in the 20s on a theatre organ in New Jersey. And I think this organ sounds rather like that organ Fats used to play there. So I'm going to play something in the style of Fats Waller for you today on this organ. And if you want to hear more, now, when I say more, I'm going to sort of continue recording a few extra pieces today because I never really get the chance to play these organs. So I will be here for a while recording some extra pieces. And if you want to hear these extra pieces, you can. How? Well, consider helping us out. Now, you can, of course, help us out by simply subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, or, of course, don't forget to activate the little bell so that you know when we've got new videos coming. Forward the videos to all your friends and families. That helps us out a lot, of course. And you can, of course, help us out on the financial side of things through Patreon or Steady, that's a kind of German Patreon, and PayPal. And those people who help us out like that will be receiving extra videos of extra pieces I record in organs we visit in the future. We've got some rather amazing instruments coming up in the next few weeks and months, including our first 5 manual instrument, which we're visiting in a couple of weeks. That'll be rather good fun. And I'm going to to record extra pieces on all of these exciting organs from now on, so that I can then provide them as little thank yous and little extras to our patrons and steady members, and so on and so on. So there we have it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our first theatre organ here on the channel. I'm very excited about it, and I hope I will come back here one day and maybe play for a live audience here. Everyone in Germany thinks cinema organs are only there to accompany silent films, and they don't really know about the repertoire that exists for these organs. Don't forget, back in the 20s, 30s and 40s, in the big cinemas, thousands of people would go out for the evening's entertainment, and the organist would play in between the reels, in between the films. It was like a complete show, and a good organist would play the tunes of the day to sort of, spice things up before the film. So there is not only that, and there's actual sort of real repertoire written extra for these instruments. So that's not really well known here, so maybe I'll be able to come back and do that one day. So there we have it. Time for a piece of music. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.